31 Forgotten African Kingdoms and Empires Before Colonialism. The everything you know is wrong. Stop believing the myth that Africa had no history before colonization. That is a lie. Long before European ships arrived, the continent was dominated by megacities, warrior queens, and empires so wealthy they crashed global economies. Why were these 31 powerful civilizations erased from your history books? Today, we're uncovering the lost chapters they didn't want you to see. Number 1. The Garamantian Kingdom flourished deep in the Sahara, centered in the Fezzan region of present-day Libya. For centuries, it sustained towns and fields in an environment many assume could not support complex states. One key was water. Archaeology shows extensive underground channels, often called fagaras, that helped bring groundwater to settlements and agriculture. The Garamantes also sat astride trans-Saharan connections, linking Mediterranean worlds with regions farther south through exchange networks. Greek and Roman writers mentioned them, sometimes through the lens of rivalry and misunderstanding, but excavations have revealed their own urban life, fortified sites, cemeteries, and material evidence of trade. Their story challenges the idea of the Sahara as an empty barrier and shows it could also be a corridor of state formation. Number 2. The Numidian Kingdoms rose in North Africa during the centuries when Carthage and Rome competed for power. Numidia was not one single tribe or city, but a political landscape that could unite under strong kings, most famously Massinissa in the 2nd century before the Common Era. Numidia's importance is often reduced to its role in Roman history, yet it had its own institutions, cavalry traditions, and diplomatic strategy. Numidian rulers navigated alliances, expanded territory, and sponsored urban development. Inscriptions and archaeology show a blending of local North African traditions with wider Mediterranean influences, without being merely an imitation of them. Numidia's history helps explain how African states shaped the politics of the ancient Mediterranean, not just reacted to it. Number 3. The Kingdom of Kush, centered first at Napata and later at Meroe in the Nile Valley, was one of Africa's great long-lasting powers. At times, Kush ruled Egypt itself, producing the so-called Kushite pharaohs, and even when it did not, it remained a strong neighbor with its own identity. Kush left behind pyramids, temples, royal burials, and distinctive art. It also developed its own writing system, often called the Meroitic script, which is still not fully understood today. Kush's position along the Nile allowed it to connect inner Africa with Red Sea and Mediterranean trade. The long duration of Kush reminds us that African states could endure for centuries, adapting to shifting trade routes, climates, and political rivals while maintaining continuity in royal culture. Number 4. The Kingdom of Aksum, in the highlands of present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, became a major power in the first millennium of the Common Era. Aksum controlled productive agricultural lands and developed long-distance trade links through Red Sea ports, connecting to Arabia, the Eastern Mediterranean, and beyond. Archaeology and inscriptions reveal kings who built monumental stelae and presented themselves as rulers with broad ambitions. Aksum also adopted Christianity early, shaping religious history in the region for centuries afterward. Its coinage is especially significant. Coins are a sign of complex administration and participation in international commerce, and Aksumite coins help historians trace political changes over time. Aksum's story shows an African kingdom deeply engaged with global trade and ideas, while rooted in local power structures. Number 5. The Kingdom of Makuria was one of the Christian Nubian states that formed in the Nile Valley south of Egypt after the decline of earlier powers. Centered around the city of Dongola, Makuria became known for its churches, monasteries, and distinctive wall paintings that survive in archaeological sites. It also became known for diplomacy. For centuries, Makuria maintained a political relationship with Muslim-ruled Egypt that included negotiation, tribute arrangements, and periods of conflict and cooperation. This long stability complicates any simple story of unstoppable conquest. Makuria shows how African states could preserve autonomy through strategy and statecraft, not only through battlefield victories. Its legacy survives in art, architecture, and the evidence of a literate Christian tradition in Nubia that lasted far longer than many people realize. Number 6. The Adal Sultanate emerged in the Horn of Africa as a powerful Muslim polity connected to trade and scholarship. It is especially remembered for the 16th century wars that reshaped the region, including the campaigns led by Ahmed ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi, sometimes known in Ethiopian tradition as Ahmed Gran. Adal's story is not only about warfare. It reflects a wider world of coastal trade, inland pastoral economies, Islamic learning, and shifting alliances among diverse communities. Written sources from the region and from foreign observers must be handled carefully, since they often reflect political agendas, but they still reveal a complex state operating across ecological zones. Adal matters because it shows the Horn of Africa as a center of state formation and intellectual life, not a distant edge of history. Number 7. The Ajuran Sultanate, centered in parts of present-day Somalia, controlled key river valleys and trade routes, and developed a reputation for strong administration. Its influence is often discussed through the lens of wells, fortifications, and coastal commerce. In a region where water management can determine political power, controlling access to wells and river systems supported authority and taxation. Ajuran networks connected interior communities with Indian Ocean trade, linking Africa to Arabia, Persia, and South Asia through ports and merchant relationships. Although many details remain debated, Ajuran is important because it highlights sophisticated governance in the Horn and shows how environmental knowledge, infrastructure, and commerce could reinforce state power. Number 8. The Kilwa Sultanate was one of the most influential Swahili coast city-states, rising to prominence through Indian Ocean trade. Kilwa, located on the coast of present-day Tanzania, became wealthy by connecting inland gold and other goods to maritime routes. Archaeology reveals coral stone architecture, including the Great Mosque of Kilwa and palace complexes that reflect both local building traditions and wider Indian Ocean influences. Kilwa's rulers and merchants were part of a cosmopolitan world where language, religion, and trade linked communities across the sea. This was not a simple story of outsiders controlling the coast. Swahili societies were African societies, rooted in local communities and shaped by long-distance exchange. Kilwa helps correct the misconception that Africa's major trade networks were only overland. Number 9. Great Zimbabwe was the center of a powerful state in southern Africa between roughly the 11th and 15th centuries. Its stone architecture, built without mortar, includes the Great Enclosure and other monumental walls that still dominate the landscape. Great Zimbabwe's economy connected cattle wealth, agriculture, and trade, including links to the Indian Ocean world through routes that moved gold and other goods toward the coast. For a long time, outsiders tried to deny that Africans built Great Zimbabwe, inventing foreign explanations. Archaeology has thoroughly disproven those racist myths. Great Zimbabwe stands as evidence of indigenous state power, engineering skill, and regional influence. It also shows how political authority could be expressed through architecture and control of trade, rather than through a single imperial capital in the style of Europe or Asia. Number 10. The Kingdom of Mapungubwe, which predates Great Zimbabwe, flourished in the Limpopo Valley region in the 11th to 13th centuries. Archaeological discoveries at Mapungubwe include elite burials and evidence of long-distance trade, such as imported beads and ceramics, showing connections reaching the Indian Ocean. Mapungubwe is significant because it reveals early social stratification and centralized authority in southern Africa, along with a pattern of leadership, associated with hilltop centers and sacred landscapes. The site also helps historians trace how political power moved and transformed over time in the region. Rather than a sudden appearance of complexity, Mapungubwe suggests a long process of state formation, experimentation, and regional integration that set the stage for later polities. Number 11. The Mutapa Empire, sometimes called the Kingdom of Mutapa, rose after the era of Great Zimbabwe and dominated parts of present-day Zimbabwe and Mozambique from around the 15th century onward. Mutapa's rulers controlled gold-producing regions and maintained relationships with Indian Ocean trading networks. Portuguese sources describe diplomatic contact, conflict, and attempts at influence, but these accounts must be read critically because they reflect colonial ambitions. Even so, they show Mutapa acting as a state with its own priorities, managing alliances, tribute systems, and internal politics. Mutapa matters because it demonstrates continuity and transformation in southern African state power after Great Zimbabwe, and because it highlights how African rulers negotiated with foreign commercial and military pressures long before formal colonization. Number 12. The Rozvi Empire emerged in the 17th century in the Zimbabwe Plateau region and became known for military strength and control of trade. The Rozvi built stone-walled centers that echoed earlier architectural traditions while developing new political strategies. They challenged foreign influence, including Portuguese attempts to dominate inland commerce, and they organized power through a combination of military force, cattle wealth, and regional authority. The Rozvi story also shows how states can rise in response to changing economic conditions and external threats. While the details of Rozvi governance are reconstructed through a mix of oral tradition and historical records, the broader picture is clear. This was a formidable African polity, shaping the region's politics well into the period when European presence was expanding along the coasts. Number 13. The Kingdom of Kongo, centered in West-Central Africa, formed around the late medieval period and became one of the best documented African states in early contact era sources. Its capital, Mbanza Kongo, was a major political and ceremonial center. Kongo developed a centralized kingship with provincial administration, and it engaged in diplomacy with Portugal after initial contact in the late 15th century. Kongo's rulers adopted Christianity in complex ways, blending new religious forms with local politics and debates. Letters and reports from Congolese elites show a state negotiating trade, religious authority, and sovereignty. Kongo is essential for understanding that African diplomacy was not passive. It involved negotiation, strategy, and internal contestation, and it created written archives that allow African voices to be heard more directly than in many other regions. Number 14. The Kingdom of Ndongo and the Kingdom of Matamba, in the region of present-day Angola, are often discussed together because of their intertwined politics and the famous leadership of Queen Njinga in the 17th century. These kingdoms faced intense pressure from the Atlantic slave trade and Portuguese expansion. Yet they were not simply victims. They made alliances, shifted strategies, and fought wars to defend autonomy. Njinga's diplomacy, including her ability to negotiate with foreign powers while managing internal rivalries, reveals sophisticated statecraft under extreme conditions. Ndongo and Matamba also remind us that pre-colonial does not mean isolated from global forces. African states were already entangled with international markets and political threats, and they responded with agency, sometimes successfully and sometimes at great cost. Number 15. The Luba Kingdom, in the region of present-day Democratic Republic of the Congo, became a major Central African power with influential political traditions. Luba history is preserved through oral narratives, royal symbols, and material culture, including art objects that encoded memory and legitimacy. Luba political organization emphasized kingship supported by councils and ritual authority. Trade networks helped connect Luba to surrounding regions, spreading ideas and prestige. The Luba legacy is also important because it shaped later states and influenced the political culture of a wide area. Too often, African history is treated as if it only becomes real when written documents appear. Luba shows how sophisticated historical consciousness and political institutions can be preserved through oral and artistic forms that require careful, respectful interpretation. Number 16. The Lunda Empire grew in Central Africa and became a major regional power from roughly the 17th century onward. Lunda influence spread through a combination of political alliance, migration, tribute relationships, and shared ritual authority. Rather than a single centralized empire in every sense, Lunda can be understood as a flexible system of power that adapted to local conditions, connecting multiple communities under a shared political culture. This kind of structure can be difficult to recognize if one expects only the administrative models of Europe or Asia. Lunda's importance lies in showing alternative ways empires can function, through kinship ties, symbolic authority, and negotiated relationships, not only through direct rule. Lunda traditions also influenced neighboring polities and shaped regional politics well into the 19th century. Number 17. The Kingdom of Buganda, on the northern shores of Lake Victoria, became one of the most powerful states in the Great Lakes region. Buganda developed strong kingship, a capital-centered court culture, and effective mobilization of labor and military power. Its location supported agriculture, fishing, and control of lake transport, giving it economic strength and strategic reach. Buganda's leaders built institutions that could integrate clans and manage succession disputes, although internal conflict was never absent. In the 19th century, Buganda engaged actively with new trade and religious influences, including Islam and Christianity, long before formal colonial rule took full shape. Buganda matters because it shows sustained state building in the interior of East Africa, with complex governance not dependent on coastal trade alone. Number 18. The Empire of Bunyoro-Kitara, also in the Great Lakes region, was for centuries a major rival and counterpart to Buganda. Bunyoro's influence was connected to control of fertile lands, cattle economies, and trade routes linking different ecological zones. Oral traditions and later written records describe periods of expansion and fragmentation, as well as shifting balances of power among Great Lakes states. Bunyoro's political culture included kingship supported by ritual authority and networks of chiefs. Its history shows the dynamism of the Great Lakes region, where multiple states competed, formed alliances, and adapted to change. Understanding Bunyoro alongside Buganda helps avoid the mistake of treating one kingdom as the whole story of East Africa's interior. Number 19. The Empire of Ghana, known in some traditions as Wagadu, flourished in West Africa centuries before the Mali Empire. It was located not in the same place as the modern country of Ghana, but farther north, in the Sahel region. Ghana grew powerful through control of trade, especially the movement of gold and other goods along trans-Saharan routes. Arabic language writers described a wealthy ruler and a capital with distinct quarters, although their accounts mix observation with rumor and should be read cautiously. Archaeology at sites associated with the empire helps fill in the picture of urban life and commerce. Ghana's real importance is that it shows early state formation tied to trade, taxation, and political authority in West Africa long before European coastal contact. Number 20. The Mali Empire rose in the 13th century and became one of the most influential states in African history. Mali is sometimes reduced to one famous ruler, Mansa Musa, and his celebrated pilgrimage, but the empire's strength rested on broader foundations: control of key trade routes, agricultural production along river systems, and a political structure that could integrate diverse communities. Mali supported centers of learning and manuscript culture, especially in cities such as Timbuktu, while also maintaining military capacity and provincial governance. Oral epics like those about Sundiata preserve political memory, while written chronicles and travelers' accounts provide additional perspectives. Mali matters not only for wealth, but for showing long-term governance, scholarship, and diplomacy in West Africa. Number 21. The Songhai Empire became a dominant Sahelian power in the 15th and 16th centuries, building on earlier Songhai states and expanding its reach along the Niger River. Cities such as Gao and Timbuktu became important political and intellectual centers. Songhai's administration included provincial officials and systems of taxation that supported a large state. It also demonstrates the complexity of Islamic scholarship in West Africa, where local scholars debated law, theology, and politics within their own intellectual traditions. Songhai eventually faced a devastating invasion from Morocco in the late 16th century, but its political and cultural legacy continued in successor states and regional memory. Songhai shows how African empires could be both militarily formidable and intellectually vibrant, without fitting simplistic stereotypes. Number 22. The Kanem-Bornu Empire, centered around the Lake Chad Basin, was one of Africa's longest-lasting political formations. It evolved over many centuries, shifting centers of power and adapting to environmental and political change. Kanem-Bornu connected Saharan trade routes with the savannas to the south and maintained cavalry forces that supported state authority. Written sources, including chronicles, help trace rulers and reforms, while archaeology and oral traditions illuminate everyday life and regional relationships. Kanem-Bornu's endurance matters because it challenges the idea that African states were short-lived or fragile. It also highlights the Lake Chad region as a major historical crossroads, linking North Africa, West Africa, and Central Africa through commerce, scholarship, and diplomacy. Number 23. The Hausa City-States, including well-known centers such as Kano, Katsina, and Zazo, formed a network of urban polities in what is now northern Nigeria and surrounding regions. Rather than a single empire, they were a constellation of cities connected by trade, language, craft production, and competition. These city-states became famous for markets, leatherwork, textiles, and long-distance commerce linking the Sahara to forest zones. Islamic scholarship took root in many Hausa centers, contributing to intellectual life and legal practice. The Hausa city-states are essential because they show an alternative political pattern, not one imperial capital ruling everything, but a system of cities whose power came from trade, specialization, and urban institutions. Number 24. The Mossi Kingdoms developed in the Volta region and surrounding areas and endured for centuries. They were known for cavalry-based military power, strong kingship traditions, and the ability to resist absorption by neighboring empires for long periods. The Mossi maintained political continuity while engaging in trade and diplomacy with Islamic Sahelian states and forest polities to the south. Much of Mossi history is preserved through oral tradition and royal institutions that maintained memory across generations. Their importance lies in showing that African political success was not only about becoming the biggest empire. It could also be about durability, stable governance, and the ability to defend autonomy while adapting to regional change. Number 25. The Jolof Empire in the Senegambia region emerged as a powerful state that integrated multiple communities through political and military relationships. It is often described as a federation or imperial structure that could expand and contract over time. Jolof's rulers managed tribute relationships and benefited from regional trade networks, including commerce that connected inland production to Atlantic coastal exchange. Over time, internal tensions and shifting alliances led to fragmentation into successor states. Jolof is important because it highlights the political creativity of Senegambia, where states formed through negotiation and strategic marriage alliances as well as conquest. It also shows that fragmentation is not simply decline, but often a reshaping of power into new forms. Number 26. The Kaabu Empire, associated with Mandinka-speaking communities in the region of present-day Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, and the Gambia, lasted for centuries and developed a strong warrior aristocracy. Kaabu's history is preserved through oral traditions that describe founding lineages, battles, and the responsibilities of elites. It was connected to wider West African political currents, including relationships with the Mali world, while also shaped by coastal trade and regional rivalries. Kaabu's fall in the 19th century was tied to warfare and political transformations in the region, including the rise of Islamic reform movements. Kaabu matters because it draws attention to West Africa's coastal hinterlands as zones of state formation, not just as footnotes to Atlantic history. Number 27. Futa Toro, along the Senegal River, became known in the 18th century for an Islamic revolution that established a new political order led by religious leaders. This was not simply a religious story. It was also about governance, taxation, social justice claims, and control of trade along a vital river corridor. Futa Toro's leaders tried to shape society according to their ideals, while facing internal disagreements and external pressures from neighboring states and expanding European influence along the coast. Futa Toro helps us understand that African political change could be driven by reform movements and debates over legitimacy, not only by dynastic conquest. It also shows how river valleys could anchor state power, just as deserts and coasts did elsewhere. Number 28. The Bamana Empire of Segu, in the inland Niger region, rose in the 18th century as a powerful West African state with strong military organization and regional influence. Bamana rulers built authority through conquest, control of agriculture, and taxation, and they governed a multi-ethnic population with complex local arrangements. The Bamana world was also culturally rich, associated with distinctive arts and institutions, including famous ritual and association systems. Like many states of the era, Segu's history includes both state building and human suffering, including participation in slave raiding that affected many communities. Understanding Segu matters because it reveals West Africa's political landscape in the centuries just before colonial conquest. A world of competing states, economic transformation, and contested moral and political visions. Number 29. The Kingdom of Benin, in present-day southern Nigeria, became famous for its court art, especially the brass and bronze plaques and sculptures often called the Benin bronzes. These works were not merely decorative. They were historical records in metal, depicting kings, officials, and events, and they expressed the sacred authority of the Oba, or king. Benin also developed a sophisticated capital city with planned streets and defensive earthworks in parts of the region. European contact brought new trade opportunities and dangers, but Benin maintained strong institutions for centuries. The tragic looting of Benin's artworks during the British punitive expedition of 1897 is also part of the story, highlighting how colonial violence reshaped what survives in museums today. Number 30. The Oyo Empire, a major Yoruba power in what is now southwestern Nigeria and parts of neighboring regions, became influential through cavalry strength, political organization, and trade. Oyo's rulers balanced royal authority with powerful councils and officials, creating checks that shaped governance and succession. The empire expanded through tributary relationships and military campaigns, and it benefited from commerce linking forest zones, savanna routes, and coastal exchange. Oyo's history also includes periods of internal conflict and pressure from external rivals, showing how empires can be undermined by both domestic politics and shifting regional conditions. Oyo matters because it demonstrates complex constitutional-like governance structures in an African empire, where power was negotiated rather than absolute. Number 31. The Asante Empire, centered in the forest region of present-day Ghana, rose in the late 17th and 18th centuries and became one of the most organized and influential states in West Africa. Asante built power through military capacity, control of gold resources and trade routes, and a political system that could integrate allied and conquered states. The golden stool symbolized national unity and the spiritual foundation of kingship. Asante diplomacy and warfare shaped regional politics for generations, and Asante leaders engaged strategically with European coastal powers while defending sovereignty. Asante's story is sometimes told only through later conflicts with the British, but its deeper significance lies in state building, administration, law, military organization, and the ability to mobilize resources across a large territory. These 31 kingdoms and empires are not the whole of Africa's pre-colonial political history, but they are enough to make one point unmistakable. Africa had many pasts, not a single story. Some states grew from river valleys and fertile highlands. Others drew power from deserts, lakes, forests, or sea routes. Some were centralized monarchies, while others were federations or networks of city-states. Some left stone walls, churches, mosques, and palaces. Others left art, oral traditions, and political institutions that carried memory across centuries. Colonialism did not bring history to Africa. It interrupted, redirected, and often violently reshaped histories that were already underway. Remembering these kingdoms and empires is not about nostalgia. It is about accuracy and about recognizing the depth and diversity of African statecraft, culture, and innovation. If one of these surprised you, share which one stood out and why. And if there is a kingdom or empire you think belongs on this list, you can add it as well, because the most important lesson is that the story is larger than any single video.